Hi, my name's Bella. I don't have an intro. I find them so awkward to film. However, I will tell you what I'll be talking about today, which in my opinion is one of the most interesting stories and tales to talk about. That is the legend of King Arthur Pendragon. If he was real, if he was myth, who knows? But I will be talking about the foundations of who he was and the important characters along the way and the sources from which we know if he was necessarily a true person or just folklore. So King Arthur, he had many different names in Welsh, I've got my iPad here full of everything, in Welsh, in Cornish, in Breton and in French. I'm gonna butcher the names so badly, so I'll put them all here for you to see. He was a legendary king of Britain. He was a folk hero and a central figure in the medieval literary tradition known as the Matter of Britain. In Welsh sources, Arthur is portrayed as a leader of post-Roman Britain, or Britons, in the battles against the Anglo-Saxons in the late 5th century or 6th centuries. The medieval manuscript Historia Brittonum describes Arthur as fighting against the Anglo-Saxons in 12 different battles in 9 different locations. There has been considerable amount of debates over the exact locations of those sources. It would be remiss to ignore the fact that Arthur's historicity is by no means universally accepted. Many scholars believed that he was either a fictitious character. Am I saying that right? Fictitious? Fictitious? One moment, please. Fictitious. There we go. Right. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Many scholars believe that he was either a fictitious character or a figure of folklore and myth who came to be historicized over the centuries. Nonetheless, many other scholars accepted that there was most definitely some kind of historical figure behind the legend, but in any case, whether he was real or not, it does not really matter, because these battles most definitely did take place, and it's only the certainty of someone taking these actions which is most popularized to be Arthur. Numerous scholars who rejected Arthur's historicity nonetheless attempted to identify the locations of Historia Brittonum's battle lists. With this foundation established, what do we know about Arthur's battles? Well, according to Historia Brittonum, they occurred at some point after Octa became king of Kent. Put a little photo up. And for those who are not English or British who don't know where Kent is southeast of England. But it was also in between before Ida became king of Bernicia. And I'll put the photo up here. For those who also aren't necessarily British or English, Bernicia would have been between England and Scotland. That would place them somewhere between the first half of the 6th century. These battles are presented as being highly significant and damaging to the fall of Saxons and Anglo-Saxons. The 9 battles listed in Historia Brittonum are, get ready for my butchering of the pronunciations, River Gleam, the River Douglas, the River Bassus, the Celadon or Celadon Wood, the Junian Fort, the city of Legion, Tribute, Bregwine, and Baden. He first appeared into early medieval historical sources, which one I just mentioned, Historia Brittonum, and then Annales Cambria. But however, these dated about 300 years after he supposedly lived. And most historians who study that period do not necessarily consider him as a historical figure. His name also occurs in Welsh poetic sources, such as Y Gododdin. Love that name, Y Gododdin. I'm probably butchering it as well, I'm sorry. The character developed the Welsh mythology, appearing either as a great warrior defending Britain, or from defending them from humans and supernatural enemies, or as a magical figure or folklore, and was sometimes associated with the Welsh otherworld, Annwn or Unwin. Okay, hi. So this is kind of like 2 weeks later because my camera didn't record the entire thing. Sorry. I'm on holiday at the moment, so I'm just really trying to record this so I don't forget. So where was I? I was talking about the pronunciation of Annwn. Still don't know how to pronounce it. Okay, so the legend of Arthur soon developed as a figure of international interest, and this is largely through the popularity of Geoffrey of Monmouth's imaginative 12th century Historia Regum Britanniae, which basically means the history of the kings of Britain. Geoffrey depicted Arthur as a king of Britain who defeated the Saxons and built a large and vast empire. Many elements and incidences that are well known, that are now like integral parts of the Arthurian legends, appear in Geoffrey's Historia, including the famous characters such as Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon. Put some photos up here. And then you have the magician and warlock Merlin. And then you have Arthur's wife, Guinevere. We love Guinevere. And you have the sword Excalibur. And then his final battle against his traitorous son, Mordred, at Camlan. And then his final rest in Avalon. Okay, furthermore, I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm going to say Chrétien de Troyes. I'm going to put his name right here, because I don't think I pronounced that right. The 12th century French writer who added Lancelot to the story began the genre of Arthurian romance, which in turn became a significant strand of medieval literature. In these French stories, the narrative focuses and often shifts from King Arthur himself to other characters such as the various Knights of the Round Table. So now the Knights of the Round Table are extremely interesting to the Arthurian legends. These legendary knights of the Fellowship of King Arthur that first appear in the French language Matter of Britain literature in the mid-12th century. The Knights are an order dedicated to ensure the peace of Arthur's kingdom, following an early warring period, entrusted in later years to undergo a mystical quest for the Holy Grail. I'll put some photos up here. If you can hear my dog, sorry. The round table at which they meet is a symbol of equality of its members, who range from sovereign royals to minor nobles. These These knights also ranged from all over Britain to Europe and even outside of Europe, which was also like an extremely rare thing to depict in medieval literature. It was always very Britain, England, partially French areas. So this was an extremely rare piece of literature to acquire. Their ranks often included Arthur's close and distant relatives, such as Agravain, Gaheris or Jaehaerys, and Yvain, as well as his reconciled former enemies like Galahorn, Pellinore, and Lot. Several of the most notable knights of the Round Table, among them is Bedivere, Gawain, and Kai, his foster brother. are based on the older characters from a host of great warriors associated with Arthur in the early Welsh tales. Some such as Lancelot, Percival, and Tristan. Sorry, I gotta scroll down. Other well-known members of the Round Table included the Holy Knight Galahad, replacing Percival as the main Grail Knight in later stories, and Arthur's treacherous son and nemesis, Mordred. Boo. Okay. Then this leads to the one and only Arthur's well-known sidekick or guardian or protector, Merlin. Okay, sorry, I remember Merlin. He was an enchanter, a wise man in the Arthurian legend and romance of the Middle Ages. He linked with personas in ancient Celtic mythology, especially with Mirrodin in Welsh tradition. He appeared in the Arthurian legend as an enigmatic figure by varying attitudes of suspicions regarding towards magic and witchcraft. Thus, treatments of Merlin reflected different stages in the development of Arthurian romance itself. In Joffrey's account, he was an advisor to Uther Pendragon, and after his passing, an advisor to Arthur himself. Joffrey further developed the story of Merlin by adapting a northern legend about a wild man in the woods, gifted with the powers of divination. Earlier in the 13th century, Robert de Boron's versus romance Merlin added a Christian dimension to the character, making him a prophet of the Holy Grail, whose legend had by then been linked with the Arthurian legend. The author of the first part of the Vulgate cycle made the demonic side of Merlin as character predominant, but in later branches of the Vulgate circle, Merlin again became a prophet of the Holy Grail, while his role of Arthur's counsellor was fulfilled out. It was Merlin, for example, who advised Uther to establish the knightly fellowship of the Round Table, who suggested that Uther's true heir would be revealed by a test that involved Sword in the Stone, in which it was set. It also included a story of the wizard's infatuation, with the Lady of the Lake. I love the Lady of the Lake, which eventually brought out about his death. The Arthurian legends extended to so much more than what I have talked about today. I've only simply brushed on the foundations of who Arthur was. Was he real or was he myth? Many say he is of folk stories, however place him as some sort of historical figure due to historians needing a name for important and significant battles and tales of the 5th and 6th century. So that's that. It might not be so much more than what you expected. I only really wanted to brush on who he was, not necessarily every single tale that he was part of. So I really hope you enjoyed learning something new about King Arthur. Hello. Sorry, it's my dog. But yeah. And now my camera isn't there, so I don't need to inch closer. I can just go like this. Bye.